Hi, welcome to our coverage of the ASEG Annual Conference in Sapphire Now 2014. We are in the ASEG News Studio, sponsored by NTT Data. I have with me here today a team prepared to talk about user performance, user competency, and training. We have Connie Legault. Legault. I'm so much nicer in French. She's the Global IT Learning Manager with Goldcorp, and Claudia Mandelli, User Performance Consultant with SAP. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Now, your team is presenting at ASEG Annual Conference, and that's why we really wanted to make sure that you had a chance to tell your story on the news show as well today.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk a little to you about, Connie, about your transitioning at Goldcorp. There's a real push at the company that's kind of driven you to share your story.
Yes, we're starting a new IT training program. We're trying to build a standard IT training program across all of Goldcorp. We've been bringing in newer and newer technology, and we discovered that people are starting to resist so many changes, so much technology, so we thought if we could have an IT training program to help the users so that we have better adoption of our products.
So my understanding is you had said to me that some of your super users are not so super. What was that about?
Well, Goldcorp engaged SAP to do an analysis on our users, and we discovered that our super users were not that super. And we weren't that surprised. So what happens when you first launch SAP, you prepare the users for the go live, and you train them, and they're almost ready on go live. And after go live, what happens is that we reconfigure, we make some changes. Sometimes we change our employees. They either get promoted or they leave, and then the competency comes down a little bit because they're trained by their peers. So what we're trying to do is we're going to have an internal training program so that they're not trained by their peers, and that there's a consistent training program available for them.
Now my understanding is Goldcorp has operations in North America, South America, and Latin America.
Yes.
And so as a global instance, you found that it was necessary to kind of create a global standard. Tell me about how that started for you. You mentioned the mining company that set the standard, the mining manager, yes.
Yes, so back in 2008, one of our mines, a general mine manager there, saw that we were bringing in newer technology, and that the users were struggling. So he decided to create a new position, which was an IT trainer. And so that's been ongoing since 2008, and we've discovered that the users at that mine site are way advanced than the other users at the other mine sites. So they kind of set the benchmark for everybody else. So we kind of took that idea and decided to do it globally.
I think that's really smart. I love initiative, which is great. Claudia, tell me where SAP came in to help.
And like Connie said, Goldcorp has been at a transition point and at a tipping point, and they were experiencing certain symptoms in terms of user competency, where the super users were not very super. So there was a constellation of issues that pointed out to something that we are seeing in the marketplace time and time again, and that boils down to who owns training after go live. Most companies after go live give this responsibility to each individual business unit, and as a result, that responsibility gets pushed down to the managers. And when you had a comprehensive training program, all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. So our first recommendation back to Goldcorp was reinstitute clear ownership of user competency and institute the IT learning manager, what became then Connie's position, to centralize that competency and make sure that there's a connection between IT and business to better manage that part.
Now tell me about the product you're using, which is Workforce Performance Builder. How do you like it? What are the benefits for you?
So it's an SAP product, and we call it WPB. It's an all-in-one tool. That's why I fell in love with this product right away. In the past, when we had to do training material, we had to use different applications. So if you wanted to do a short little video, you had to use one software to record a video. You had to use Word and Snagit to get little screenshots for your documentation, and then you had to do a PowerPoint presentation. While with WPB, it's an all-in-one. You record it, and then it generates all the extra material for you. And it's a one source of truth. So it's one repository, like one server for all of our training needs. So because we're a global operation, that was a big win for us, because we don't want our users looking for their training material all over the place. So it's all central.
So when we spoke, you told me that your subject matter experts on the SAP side, your SMEs, you were having a hard time wrangling them. And not because they weren't interested, but just they didn't have enough time. So you had a creative workaround to get them to buy in and start using the tools so you can build your training tools. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the biggest need was on the SAP side. The users were really asking for training. So there was a rush to create training material on the SAP side, but we needed the subject matter experts to do the recordings for us, because they know the subject. But when it came time to actually do the recording, nobody was ever available. And I thought that was kind of strange, because they need the training, but then training always falls off the list of priorities. It seems to always fall off the plate. So what we decided to do is there was other training material that needed to be done. We have a SharePoint environment, and I used to be the SharePoint manager, so we decided to create training material for that environment, just to showcase to the subject matter experts what we can provide for them, for the SAP users. And that changed everything around. We got everybody's attention. And the other thing that we did is we made it easy for them to find the material, because if we're going to provide training with technology, then the technology has to be very easy to use. So the iPad is so easy to use, it's just point and click. So we developed an app where we have all our training material on an iPad or on our intranet site. So it's a one-click thing.
So accessibility was major benefit for you,
Yes,
and a major win for the users and those who were doing the training.
For sure.
Excellent.
Yes.
So Claudia, tell me about, what do you think some of the traditional barriers are with training, not just for Goldcorp, but for companies in general?
I'm going to take a slightly different twist on that question, because the same question, when it's applied to an implementation scenario, is completely different when you're thinking about sustainment in a situation like Goldcorp. They have been live for 10 years. And so the barriers there are really tied to lack of ownership. Who owns competency? That's one of the first pieces. The second piece is thinking about user performance as an asset and not as a cost. If you think about training, most CEOs will cringe, oh, this is going to cost me money. And it's only about risk avoidance. The paradigm shift is really thinking, this is not a cost. I am investing in an asset. The asset is the users. And therefore, just like every asset, like a car, you need to change the oil, you need to maintain it, you need to make sure that it works really well. So really the obstacles are really tied to changing the paradigm and changing the mindset from training is a cost and it's risk avoidance to training is an asset. User performance is an asset and it needs to be maintained.
So last question for you. If there is a company embarking and tackling some of these challenges, what are some of the lessons learned? What would you like to make sure that they walk away with? I'll start with you, Connie.
That training is important, and it needs to be part of the process if you want to have great adoption of your software. So yeah, be innovative, make it simple for the users, think out of the box.
Great. Claudia?
And echoing that, we're living in a very different environment right now. The demands of the learners are very different than what they used to be in the past. Make it simple, make it fun, make it engaging, and particularly at the strategic and the executive level, build the awareness of that the total value of your SAP investment will come from your users as well.
Well, it sounds like you've built a tremendous team together. I appreciate your sharing your story with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. For more ASUG and SAP news, visit asugnews.com.